deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Night of Lights, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. One day in Peppa Pig's village, they decided to hold a new celebration, the Night of Lights. Mummy Pig explained,
"We'll light lanterns and release them into the sky. It's an ancient tradition to thank those who watch from above."
"Who are they?" asked Peppa.
Mummy smiled. That evening, the whole village gathered on the hill. The children held paper lanterns. On each one, they had to write a wish. Peppa wrote, "I want everything to always be fun." When they released the lanterns into the sky, it suddenly turned inky black. No stars, no moon, just wind. And then, one of the lanterns suddenly stopped in the air. Then it floated downward, but it was no longer paper. It had turned into a face, fiery, with empty eyes. One by one, the lanterns began falling back down, turning into flaming heads. "You called us," they whispered. "Now everything will be fun, forever." The light vanished. People started screaming. No one could escape. Figures of flame and ash touched everyone. By morning, the village was empty. Scattered across the ground were hundreds of paper lanterns, and each one had the same message written on it. "I want everything to always be fun." Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Peppa Pig and the Night Vampire, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. One foggy autumn night, Peppa woke up to a strange sound outside the window. It wasn't just the wind. She heard a quiet whisper, as if someone was calling her name. P-Ipa, P-Ipa. Peppa got out of bed and walked to the window. At the edge of the garden stood a tall shadow with long arms and glowing eyes. The eyes were red. It was the night vampire, an ancient legend Grandma had once told her about. He came for those who misbehaved and didn't brush their teeth before bed. The next morning, Peppa told Mummy and Daddy everything, but they just laughed. However, that night, it happened again. The whisper was louder, and the shadow came closer. Now the vampire was right outside the window, his claws scratching at the glass. Peppa hid under her blanket and heard a creak. The door opened on its own. From the darkness, George stepped into the room, but his eyes were red too. "Welcome to the club, sister," he whispered. "Now you'll become one of us." The next morning, the family looked as usual. They smiled, they drank tea, but their eyes were slightly red, and for breakfast, they weren't eating porridge. They were eating bones. Since then, if you ever hear a whisper in the night, P-Ipa, know this: the vampire pigs are on the hunt. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Madame Gazelle's Virus, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. One day at kindergarten, Madame Gazelle came in very pale and silent. She didn't smile, didn't sing, didn't tell stories. Instead, she just stood and stared at the children without blinking. "Madame Gazelle, are you okay?" Peppa asked. The teacher didn't respond. She only whispered softly, "You will become like me too." The next day, George started coughing. His skin turned gray and he began walking strangely, slowly, dragging his feet. Daddy Pig said it was just a cold. But soon, Mummy Pig got sick too. Then Susie, then Daddy. The eyes of the infected turned cloudy. They stopped talking. They only whispered, "The virus is inside. It's hungry." Peppa hid under the bed and kept a diary. On the last day, her entries looked like this. Mummy bit Daddy. George is knocking at the door. I don't want to open it. The final entry was written at 3:47 a.m. They're inside. Since then, Peppa Pig's house has stood empty. But sometimes, if you go near the window, you can still hear P-E-Pa-A, join us. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Full Moon in the Forest, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. One day, the pig family decided to go on a joint picnic with the wolf family. In the morning, Daddy Pig called his best friend and shared the idea. They immediately agreed, and both families set off for the countryside. Look at this beautiful forest, the perfect place, fresh air, the scent of the woods, said Daddy Pig. We're so glad you invited us. It's nice to finally get out into nature, added Mummy Wolf. The men lit a campfire. Mummy Wolf served homemade pastries, and the wolf children played tag. But when the sun disappeared behind the trees, the atmosphere changed. The wind grew sharp. The temperature dropped. Somewhere in the distance, a lonely creature howled. It's just a fox, said Daddy Wolf, but his eyes glinted with a strange light. Let's stay the night. We brought tents, suggested Mummy Wolf. It'll be so fun under the full moon. Mummy Pig hesitated, then nodded. At 12:03 a.m., Peppa woke up to rustling sounds. Peeking through a slit in the tent, she saw the silhouettes of the wolves. They were standing with their backs turned, heads lifted to the sky. Their bodies twitched, stretched, bones cracked. Then came the howl, long, ravenous. Daddy Pig burst out of the tent. What the... But he didn't get to finish. A figure lunged from the darkness and sank its teeth into his neck. Thanks for the dinner and the warm welcome, whispered the head of the wolf family. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Cursed Television, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. One cold, deep night, Peppa woke up to the sound of static. It sounded like the television. But I turned it off before bed, Peppa thought. She left her room. The screen was flickering, and in it she saw her own reflection, but with empty eyes. Peppa, come closer. Look. A hand stretched out from the screen, dark, trembling with long nails. It grabbed Peppa by the leg and started to pull her in. Peppa screamed. Mummy Pig woke up from the noise. She rushed in and unplugged the television. The next morning, Daddy Pig said, "It must have been a glitch last night. Everything's fine now." He turned the TV back on. On the screen was Peppa. She was staring at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Why didn't you help me?" Since then, the pig family moved to a new house, and legend has it that the old television still glows. And at night you can hear the screams, "Why didn't you help me?" Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Voices on the Walkie-Talkie, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. Daddy Pig gave Peppa and George walkie-talkies so they could talk to each other while playing hide-and-seek. Just don't use them at night, Mummy Pig said sternly. Walkie-talkies can pick up strange signals. Everything was fun until one evening, right before bed, Peppa turned on her walkie-talkie. Suddenly, a strange crackling voice came through the speaker. "P-E-E-Pa, you're not alone." "George, is that you?" Peppa asked. Silence. Then again, "I'm hiding in the closet. find me. Peppa walked over to the closet and slowly opened the door. It was empty. "Very funny, George," she muttered. But the second walkie-talkie was still lying next to George's bed. He was sound asleep. The next morning, the voice came through the walkie-talkie again. "Found one. Now you." George was gone. That night, the static returned. "Only you left. I'm coming." Deleted Peppa Pig episode. Peppa Pig's Cursed Christmas, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. On Christmas Eve, Peppa's family was getting ready for the holiday. They decorated the tree, baked cookies, and left treats for Santa. But at night, exactly at 3:33, the clock started ticking backward, and Peppa woke up from a strange chill. George was standing by the window, whispering, "Santa came, but he's different." Something was in the yard, tall in a red cloak, with claws and hollow eyes. It was the spirit of Christmas, to whom Grandpa Pig had promised one perfect holiday in exchange for the family many years ago. Now it had come to collect the debt. Mummy and Daddy vanished, leaving only shadows on the walls. Frost and whispers crept from the fireplace. The spirit opened its sack and said, "You are part of Christmas, forever." By morning, the house was empty. Only the milk and a note stood by the fireplace. "Thank you for a delicious holiday." Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Don't Step in the Puddle, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. Peppa once loved jumping in muddy puddles. It was her favorite thing to do. But one day, everything changed. In an episode no one ever saw on TV, it was pouring rain. Peppa woke up alone. George was gone, and so were her parents. Outside, everything was flooded. The yard was drowning in strange purple puddles, deeper than usual, far too deep. Peppa stepped outside, let out a happy snort, and jumped into the first puddle. But instead of a cheerful splash, there was a dull, sucking sound. The puddle pulled her body down deeper. Hee, that's not funny," Peppa said. "Let go." But the puddle only pulled harder. Suddenly, a face rose from the water. It looked like hers, but with no eyes and a stretched mouth. It spoke, "One jump, and you stay forever." Shadows began rising from the puddle. First Daddy, then George. "Jump with us, Peppa. We're family." The puddle dragged her even deeper, and then she began to change into a monster. The last thing she saw was the sky. Since then, in every episode, if you look closely at the puddles, you can see a face. And if a child stares at the screen too long, tiny reflections appear in their eyes too. Small, wet, and calling them to jump.